Well, today it's going to be a fun day. Met a new friend, and as serendipity as would have it, and just kind of allowing for us to just hop out on an interview. Derrick with TerraQuest. He's got some like really revolutionary stuff going on. I figure it'd be cool just to have a discussion on bikes. His company is related to bikes. I think that what he's doing is going to really change the world, though, honestly. I think a lot of times people say that. He's doing some crazy stuff, like starting a new economy, basically. Derrick, what is TerraQuest?
TerraQuest is a new application that's going to pay people for clean commuting.
Okay, you're going to pay people. Where does the money come from?
Money's going to come from corporations purchasing carbon offsets, contributing to happier, healthier workplaces. Long term, we're going to tokenize carbon offsets so anybody can generate them by clean commuting, like riding an e-bike or a regular bike or walking. Anyone will be able to purchase those offsets.
This offset thing, this is something that goes on now, though, right? Like companies buy carbon offsets now?
Yep, sure are.
But not necessarily in this format of...
There is no clean commuting offset. There's nobody incentivizing people to avoid carbon emissions by riding a bike.
So basically the idea is if you're using a bike or some other form of transportation, aside from using a carbon emitting form of transportation, you effectively have a negative carbon...
You're avoiding those carbon emissions associated with passenger vehicle travel.
And big companies that emit a lot of carbon, they effectively want to offset their carbon footprint, and they could utilize somebody like you or myself or somebody that's watching this that rides a bike.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yep. So anybody can go get the app, download it, and start recording their clean commutes.
How do people track like what they're riding, how they're offsetting things?
Right now it's really easy. You just record GPX tracks when you're clean commuting using the TerraQuest app. Or some other app, and then you could upload your GPX tracks.
Okay, so you can use another app and transfer a GPX file as well?
Yeah.
And there's many things that do that currently, right? Like, does Strava do that, the GPX file? Or?
Yep, that's how they get exported.
Actually, the Bosch system will do that as well. I think they'll create a GPX file, I believe, on the smart displays at least, like the newer displays.
But we plan for people to get paid two ways. One way is they can join a corporate employee commuter program, clean commuting program, and they'll get paid directly.
And there's even like insurance companies will also offer you some incentive and that sort of thing, right?
Health insurance companies.
But this whole token thing is super interesting to me. Yeah. I don't invest so much in those things because as I'm like really pretty much focused on my business, and that's all I've been doing. But I would be interested in investing in something like this. This is something that's really interesting to me. Yeah, so tell me about this. Of it.
Like I say, you get paid two ways. One way is joining a employee program. Another way is to just start earning TQX tokens. And the goal there is to create giant pools that are available on exchanges for anyone to buy and trade. And it's going to take a little while to get there.
But you could start investing now, right? Like kind of like the crypto market was a long time ago, where you can buy Bitcoin for whatever, under $1 or something, I guess, when it started.
We're not listed on any exchanges yet, so that'll be...
Right,
but
no, that's fair.
You can start earning the TQX tokens.
But you can earn them, right?
Yeah, you can earn them
It's
now.
kind of like you're mining tokens by riding a bike.
Exactly.
So I do know a little bit about these things. I come from the computer science world, so I understand how these things work, but...
Yep, and we're using Stellar, which is a proof of stake blockchain. It's very stable. Stellar coins are very stable. Who knows what's going to happen with cryptocurrency in the long run, but there's no doubt that it really is the future for processing transactions in real time. The blockchain allows you to democratize efforts like this. Anybody can do it.
And it kind of gamifies it as well, right?
We are going to gamify it. We're going to have leaderboards in the not too distant future so people can compete against each other for earning tokens.
What got you into this? Why are you doing this?
Well, my whole career has been sort of dedicated to figuring out how to get people to move more. I started out as a behavioral neuroscientist.
Yeah, you're a doctor, right?
Yeah, researcher, PhD researcher. I quit because I just didn't really see how the medical model and research was actually going to get us there. Plus, it was sort of like a physician heal thyself situation. Moved to Colorado, did trail maps, apps for a long time, gamification apps. The desire has always been to create something that incentivizes people to move more.
This actually got you into like what you really set out to do. It's interesting, actually, you say that, because I started Propel and the idea of getting people to move more, to get people on bikes, to get people to be less dependent on oil and stuff like that.
People don't realize how much carbon is emitted by a passenger car. So a car that gets 20 miles per gallon emits 1 pound of carbon for every mile that it's driven.
Wow.
So if you're clean commuting, you're avoiding that 1 pound every mile. It adds up. If we increased clean commuting in the US by 1%, that would avoid 2.7 million tons of carbon emissions every year.
Maybe I should know a little bit more about this topic. I'm learning, you know. I think that's the thing with this, makes it interesting, makes you want to know more about it, makes it, whenever you get money involved, people get interested. So you see this as like being applicable to just everybody, no?
Sure. I also see it as like one of the cheapest ways to deal with, to take climate action.
I really wonder, I mean, that's part of the challenge, I think, sometimes with some of these different modes of transportation. Like, for example, New York City congestion pricing. We're gonna charge the higher emitters, the causers of congestion, to enter the city, and that money is supposed to be diverted to go to the MTA towards a lower emitting, more efficient form of transportation. And I guess in theory, this is kind of similar in some ways, right? It's like having those that are emitting the carbon pay and offset and encourage other uses and other forms of transportation. I'd like to understand this a bit more, the current status of carbon offset.
So there's a cap and trade system that corporations participate in. Corporations are capped on how much they can emit.
Okay.
And if they exceed it, they can trade and buy other offsets.
Got it,
from other corporations. That's a market that's not really available to consumers. And then there are voluntary carbon offsets.
So they can't even participate necessarily if they wanted to.
So
but your platform would potentially give them the option to.
Yes, anybody can participate, because the goal is to have it to be listed on an exchange. Anybody can create them and anybody can go purchase them or trade them. There's voluntary carbon offsets that some people may be familiar with. There's offsets that are associated with planting trees.
Yeah.
The math behind that can get really fuzzy. There's these red plus carbon offsets I was talking about that reducing emissions from deforestation, protecting rainforests. All these are really good initiatives, I think, and they get people thinking about it, but the math behind it gets kind of fuzzy, and they're kind of opaque programs.
Right, because
they're not
thing,
easy for consumers to participate in. You can add it on to your plane ticket or something like that, but
yeah, like can I
what's
just go
really
and
going on?
Plant some trees and then add it to this pool? Not necessarily. I'm starting to wrap my head around this, but I got to understand it more. I don't know if you guys are tracking, but this is it's kind of complex. It's simple by nature, but I'm sure there's a lot of complexity with the technology and this and that. And you were saying that you have some goals for like what it might look like per mile or something like that if somebody's riding a bike or e-bike or something like that.
The prices are going to be determined by the marketplace. Amazon just announced last summer that they're going to pay their HQ2 employees $350 a month to bike commute. Kind of a complex incentive program, but that's what it amounts to, is $350 a month.
So $350 if you figure people work 5 days a week.
20, and then they average 10 miles a day. That's $1.75 per mile is what it works out to. Other companies are, they have max payouts of like $6 a day. So if you did the same 10, that would be 60 cents. So our forecasted price, if you want to do a program with us, it's $1 per mile. Who knows where it's going to go from there.
So if Propel wanted to sign up for this with their employees, we say, We're gonna pay. So initially, we're just gonna pay as a.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna pay this dollar per mile, and where does this money go?
It goes to the users. We charge a 5% transaction fee.
Okay.
And it's going to go to.
So they're earning
you're gonna
tokens,
pay out the users.
but if I pay the user, do I get the tokens?
No, it goes directly to the user.
Okay, but they get the
They
tokens
earn
and the money?
And the money.
What do I get?
Satisfaction that you
I mean,
know
listen,
you're doing
I'm
the right
gonna do it.
You get carbon offsets. You get carbon offsets, and you get happier, healthier employees.
Okay, so that's what I guess I might have phrased it incorrectly. So I get carbon offsets. So I could feel a little bit better about some of these plane trips that I got to take to make this business work.
Yes, and you know, if you're an employer that has a healthcare program, you can save on your healthcare and premiums.
I don't want to come across as like selfish or I don't care or whatever. But I think the reality is most people would be thinking like that. Hey, what do I get out of this? Unfortunately, the reality is that not every company is so interested or excited about being carbon neutral. I mean, I definitely aspire to that. Other companies that we know, like Bosch, for example, they are carbon neutral, and I imagine to some extent they do this by a similar program because I know that there's certain things that you kind of can't control so easily.
In the not too distant future, we're going to be building out Spacial AI that verifies everybody's tracks. Your phone can detect what kind of activity you're doing with the accelerometer. So you get
Okay.
activity data from there.
It's not like you
And then
just
you can-
hack this thing to get these tokens, because I guess that could be the concern.
And we have very slick mapping technology, very adept at using map data. And so with the Spacial AI, you'll be able to tell, from the user's accelerometer data plus map data combined with it, what people are doing. Are they actually clean commuting?
I mean, we spoke about this before, but I wonder if there's eventually this economy where people are like showing their carbon footprint on their Facebook profile or whatever. Facebook's even around these days. I don't know. Your Twitter profile. I think that'd be interesting. If you go on a dating app, you look at somebody's carbon footprint. What do you guys think? Do you think this is something in the future? Are we going to see that? How does this thing get to scale? Because you're just starting out now.
It's infinitely scalable. It's just a matter of people adopting it and using it. I think the most important thing is if you like this idea and you really do want to get paid, is to take this idea to your employer. The next big step is to get corporations into the idea and to start doing it. Start paying their employees to clean commute. That is the near-term goal, because that's how we actually start producing action. It's within corporations. The thing about TerraQuest is that a corporation really doesn't have to do anything. They just purchase the offsets, and we take care of everything else, and they'll get all the kudos. Corporations have a lot of pressure to meet environmental, societal, governance goals, sustainability goals, carbon offsets. I'm not telling them anything new. Their number one responsibility is to their employees.
And ever important now, right? As retention is a challenge and that sort of thing. You got to treat people right.
Got to treat
build
people
a good
right.
culture. Make people want to work for you.
Bike culture is a very friendly culture.
Yeah.
People who ride bikes are happier. They're healthier.
I agree. Clearly, I'm really excited about this thing, and just to be clear, this is not any sort of ad for TerraQuest. I just thought that this is an interesting company that, it's in line with the mission of Propel, the vision of what I'm trying to do here. So I said, naturally, I just want to talk about it. But I'm sure people might like to just know more about you as well. I mean, you say you're a bike commuter. You don't use electric right now. You were telling me you use a fixed gear.
I got a fixie road bike that I ride year round in Crested Butte, Colorado.
Which apparently you told me it snows. There's snow on the ground about 8 months out of the year or something like that.
Yep.
Wow.
So I just throw some studless. I got my fat bike is 40 millimeter wide tires.
So you commute year round despite the weather.
Yeah, I always have.
Cool.
Always been a bike commuter.
How'd you get into it?
I don't know. How do you? I just
did
love
it
bikes.
since you were into it.
I got
when
my
you were a
first
kid
bike when I was 7 years old. Got a bike late in life, and was in the 3rd grade. Got a bike when I was 7, and it just gave me freedom. I was gone all day.
Yeah.
After getting that bike, felt that way ever since. It's just a bicycle is, for me, it's always been about freedom.
I think that's what initially got me into bikes too, being able to ride around the neighborhood and stuff like that. Something I think is maybe not as acceptable these days as it was back when I was younger. Rode to my friend's house several miles away, I mean, that was a big deal.
Well, it is a big deal, and that's one of the reasons we live in Crested Butte, so we can have free range kids who do that.
What do you see is the future? What's 10, 20 years from now with TerraQuest?
Hey, what I hope to achieve is that TerraQuest is contributing to 1% of the solution for carbon offsets.
Okay.
So that would be by 2050, they project that there's going to be 50 gigatons or billion tons of carbon emitted into the atmosphere every year. And we got to get to net zero somehow. It's such a huge challenge.
1%
and so
of
1%
that
would be, 500 million. We'd be far better off if cities were designed for active commuting, so humans moving themselves across the cityscape.
Right.
Reasons that probably all your viewers understand. But the issue is how do you change the course of action? And you change the culture, and you change how people are incentivized. Paying people to ride bikes is probably one of the cheaper ways to start tackling the problem.
As somebody that's been studying this and looking at this and that sort of thing, where do you see the e-bike playing a part in this whole thing?
Oh, I think it has a huge role to play because it makes commuting much more accessible to more people. E-bikes are sort of taking the world by storm.
Yeah.
And they're sort of changing culture in and of themselves. But I definitely think there's a role to play to incentivize people to avoid carbon emissions.
I've been thinking a lot about the psychology of bike usage, of e-bike usage, and what gets people to change the culture and all these sort of things. One of the influences, right, is the monetary side of things. But I guess there's more of it too. That's not the only thing, because it's also perceived appearance, actual appearance, right? Like how a company is presented, because that seems to be a big influence.
Depending on the company, it could have a very positive effect on their brand, not only for their customers, but for their employees. Companies need things that they can point to and say, we are doing this.
Good
and
PR, right?
Yeah. I think the future, a not too distant future, has the potential to be like one of the best periods in human history.
It's a renaissance right now, right?
We have an opportunity before us to make things better than they've ever been. It could go the other way, but it's going to require people taking action collectively. It could be a way to unite people together.
Right. Okay.
In a common spirit.
That. Yeah.
In a common spirit.
Yeah. Wow. This is it's been super cool. I hope you've been enjoying yourself. Not a bad little work trip we got going on here.
Not bad at all. That was serendipity for sure.
So one other point you just brought up about this change, this opportunity to see this big change. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and really I see it, and I've been describing it to a lot of people as we're in a renaissance right now. We're at least in the beginning stages of a renaissance. And actually the renaissance that happened in Europe was in a lot of ways precipitated by the Black Plague.
Yes.
It seems that we're in a place where there's potential for another one in a pretty dramatic way.
It's going to depend on our generation, well, all of us, taking action. We have to actually do something about the problem. We have to do something about the problem.
But I suspect, this has shaken a lot of people up.
People are working from home. They can work in different places.
Gets people thinking about different things, and everybody at the same time too, which is a very unique situation.
Change often requires for things to break and not work.
If it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
So.
But if it's perceived as not broken, maybe more so the case, right? I mean, one of the critical things I get into quite a bit on this topic is that, yeah, sure, there's a boom going on, and there have been booms in the past, but actually if we want to keep this, we got to build infrastructure. I mean, to some extent, you're building infrastructure. You're building like a digital infrastructure, right, to support this sort of thing. We also need physical infrastructure, and I always have to remind people that. Well, Derrick, I really appreciate it. For me, I just think that this is a great cause, and it's something that I wanted to support, so I appreciate you telling us about it. And I think you did it in a pretty graceful way, and it's pretty awesome what you're doing. I think people will be excited about it. I'm interested to know what you guys think about it. I'm sure Derrick will be as well. You got to keep an eye on those comments. Maybe you could reply to some people or something like that.
Sure.
I'm sure people will appreciate that. And where can people learn more about this thing? Because I
So
imagine
you
people...
can get the app from the App Store, and you can go to TerraQuest.com. It was really great meeting you.
Yeah.
Was not planning on this at all today. I really like it when I click with other people.
For sure.
I appreciate it.